Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you found this channel, feel free to subscribe and to join us as one of the first subscribers, so that would be really awesome. Anyways, as you probably know, this channel is really new. Before I started this channel, I thought to myself, why not do some research? And naturally, I went to YouTube and I found a lot of nothing. Makes kind of sense if you consider that the platform is owned by YouTube. However, if you search on the general internet, find a lot of stuff. So naturally speaking, the biggest danger to YouTube that you find on the internet that people mention is the danger to kids. So I went on this website called Net Sanity, and Net Sanity asked themselves the question, is YouTube safe, right? And the answer is sadly no. So okay, it's obvious that I disagree because I have made this account, so if I made this account and I thought YouTube was bad, it would be very stupid for me to be here. But asking yourself at the beginning of your article the question, YouTube Kid is safe, right? Sadly, no. Well, YouTube Kids is still the internet. Yeah, but I will talk about that later, because that will probably be mentioned 100 more times. Now, they made a list of reasons why YouTube Kids is bad. First of all, it's loaded with cursing, so there are cartoons in there and other stuff that's just loaded with cursing, and let's be honest. Now, drug use and pedophilia jokes was another point, which is a problem, and YouTube is working towards solving this. So they might not have solved it yet, but again, it is the internet. It's a platform that's still growing, as you can see just by this account that has just been created. And growth also means change, and they're working hard on that. So maybe they will be able to do something more about this in the future. Now, something else that's mentioned is cartoons with graphic sexual language, characters emulating dangerous behaviors like playing with matches. This is kind of overdone by the point that follows. It says that explicit grown-up conversation about pornography, child suicide, and family violence are on YouTube Kids. The keyword here is conversation. So I don't see how conversations about these really important topics are a problem. If your kid isn't old enough to handle those conversations, again, don't let them alone on the internet. You wouldn't let a toddler have control over the TV remote, so why would you do that with the internet? Or with YouTube Kids, or with any of those sites? They are not your babysitter. And at the end of the day, learning about pornography and all those things will protect your kid. Just talk to your kids. And if you don't know enough about the stuff, educate yourself. You made the decision to have children. Your children didn't make the decision to have you as a parent. And we live in this world, so if you want your kids to have any contact with the internet at all, educate yourself to be able to educate your children. I also found a website called Anxious Toddlers, 80 Parenting Survival in the corner. Yeah, I think that says it all, but let's not judge a book by its cover. So, I scrolled a bit down a bit fast, because you didn't actually need to read the title there. It was on a flyer-like format as well. And it says, why YouTube is causing young kids to go into therapy. And I think that sums it up pretty well. anxioustoddlers.com. And on the side, there's a lot of advertisement for therapy or parent advice courses. It's an advert. Like, the entire article works as an advert. Now, the first thing it says is kids are watching sexually explicit videos and acting them out on each other. Maybe. Probably not so much on YouTube. If you put something sexually explicit in your video, it's probably gonna get demonetized, and I don't think that's what any YouTuber who actually has plans on making money, and I think most people who would be willing to go as far as to sexually sell themselves, would put that on YouTube. Now, looking at this, I gotta say, and I can't believe that I gotta say this, don't let your kids watch porn. Honestly, if your kids are acting out sexually explicit stuff on each other, you did something wrong at this point. Now, the article also talks about kids developing fears from what they're watching on YouTube. They have interviewed a psychologist apparently, and the psychologist says there are a lot of kids coming in, they say they're not allowed to play the game, but they watch videos on YouTube about it and it scares them, and it's described as a silent mini epidemic. So Your kids are probably gonna be experimenting with what they're scared of or what they're not, like what they want to watch and what not. So try to raise them in a way that they will trust you if you say, maybe don't do that, it's not good for you. And in this case, I found it especially ironic because the kid clearly says, no, it doesn't play the game because it's not allowed to. So clearly the kid has been listening to the parent. So why in God's name would you think it's anybody else's fault but the parent who did not tell the kid to also not watch it on YouTube? It's such a stupid thing. It's like you tell the kids not to smoke in school and stuff like that, and then they don't smoke, but they were never told that vaping is bad, so they vape. Just tell your kids not to do either of those. Build the trust that they come to you, at least before they need therapy. I don't know how people come up with the idea that children are this breakable. Next, the article goes on and talks about how kids are copying irresponsible kind of pranks and stuff from YouTube, but honestly, that has nothing to do with YouTube. If I think about the kids in my old class, even without being constantly on YouTube or growing up being strongly influenced by it, they were still out eating grass or paper or smelling glue and all this stuff. Like, it's not a YouTube kind of thing, and playing pranks on each other is pretty much in the same category of stupidity. So really just take care of your kids. I think that should be the message. And like the article says, supervise and find alternatives. Yeah, you don't need to control your kids, just talk to them. And like there's examples of many happily declaring, I don't let my kids anywhere near any of that. I will just make sure my kids never go on YouTube. That's not the solution. You should not put your kids in a bubble, and you should not take something away from them. That's an important part of growing up in our modern world. Because if they want to be able to function as adults later on, they need to know what the world is about and have the same influences and the same culture as their peers. Now, the next article made me kind of sad because it was on the BBC trending page, and I'm a big BBC fan. It talks about how the disturbing YouTube videos are tricking children and talking about cartoons with Peppa Pig that actually weren't that much about Peppa Pig, but about some gross stuff that was inappropriate content, not suitable for children. And again, YouTube is trying to flag this stuff, so yeah, the world isn't perfectly safe for your kids online. It's not perfectly safe for your kids outside anyways. Try to actually allow your kids to experience those things. Like, I'm not talking about the age when they're too young to decide to not watch something with blood in it because it's traumatizing for them. You should not traumatize your kids, but small setbacks, small stressful experiences prepare us for the bigger stresses in life. Now, this article also goes on to talk about stuff like how to implement the restricted mode for kids, which is nice. I appreciate the attempt of explaining stuff like this to parents, but then again, YouTube is a lot more complex than this, and I don't think doing this will actually help you get in touch with what's good, what's bad for your kids. Now, at this point, I gotta say, I was kind of bored. I don't know how many articles I read, and they pretty much all said the same thing, which makes it so absurd to think that this problem still exists if there are so many resources out there telling parents what to do. So I moved on to an article that's from The Guardian. It talks about YouTube profiting from videos promoting unproven COVID-19 treatments. And The Guardian actually has an article that's a little bit newer, but also more than 3 months old at this point, and it talks about YouTube moving to limit the spread of false coronavirus 5G theory. And there are other articles that talk about how YouTube is working against it. So you can see the platform is it is a system that doesn't stop everything in its tracks, but it tries to get rid of the problems as they appear. And it's artificial intelligence. It learns. It's not born with all knowledge. And I don't think we should hold websites to the standard of being capable of everything. I'm not saying we should forgive mistakes, because at the end of the day, it's a company, and a company should follow the laws and stuff. But if there is a hurricane, I don't expect my phone company to fix all phone lines by tomorrow morning because it's a new problem. Going on, I went to the New York Times, because that was kind of missing from the list. And the New York Times also has some wonderful articles. One that I really liked by Karen Roos. The title is pretty much "What Does PewDiePie Really Believe?" But the interesting part of the article is not about PewDiePie, in my opinion, but about the culture of YouTube itself. So in the article, the author tries to explain in a metaphor to the people who might not be used to YouTube in the way many of our generation are. So he says that there are two YouTubes, and the first YouTube is the YouTube that everybody knows. But there's a second YouTube, and it's a self-contained universe with its own values, customs, and so on. And anyone who has watched YouTube for a longer time, they will know how true that is. And he also has a wonderful metaphor, which is like the YouTube generation is able to see UV light. And the people who have been born before this mutation occurred are not capable of seeing this UV light. So those people see the other people live in a world that is increasingly being influenced by the ability to see UV light. So for people without this mutation, the entire culture that would have developed around UV light would be absurd. One of my favorite sentences from the article is, as an old person with normal eyes, you would experience this change as a kind of slow cognitive decline. And let's be honest, it could be a cognitive decline in both directions. You would probably think you yourself are getting more stupid because you can't keep up with the stuff, which I think will be true for all of us at some point. And you would also feel that all the younger people are going through cognitive decline, like the generations are getting more stupid. And this point of cognitive decline is kind of where I see the solution. Because when it comes down to it, not being able to see UV light will mean that you won't be able to identify dangers that come in UV light, and you will also not be able to differentiate between jokes and dangers within the YouTube culture. That's how PewDiePie got in trouble for making jokes that were clearly meant as jokes in the eyes of the YouTube community, but in the general media were just now, when it comes to YouTube and protecting your kids, it's a matter of learning to see UV light. There's a lot of advice on the internet on how to go into restricted mode, how to do this and that, but at the end of the day, if you want to expose your kid to a culture, you need to be able to understand that culture. Maybe listen to your kid. They're probably capable of explaining a lot more about YouTube to you than you will ever find out yourself. So at the end of the day, expose yourself to YouTube, I guess. Take care of your kids, and I don't see how YouTube is dangerous. It's just a platform that's growing, and it will not be growing forever. It will probably stop and fail at some point, but so far there's no end in sight. And clearly I have answered the question that is on the video from the beginning. Is YouTube dangerous? No, because if it were, I would not have made this video and posted it anyway.